Hi everybody, it's Thomas here from Thomas Fitzgerald Photography, and in this video I want to take a look at how I go about creating a photo essay from a selection of images. So this is a shoot I did a while ago in Norway, in Oslo, and it was part of a larger project that I did, and I didn't actually use all of these photos, but when I was going through them recently, I realized that I have a nice little sequence here that I can put into a short photo blog post, so kind of like a little small photo essay. So I have the photos here in Mylio, which is the application that I use for putting all my photos together. So if I just go through them here very quickly, you can see. So we have this sequence of this ferry coming into dock. As you can see, it's kind of, the sequence starts from the ferry right out at sea or out in the fjord, and in this case it's coming right in and ends with the ferry docked. So I don't actually have the raw files anymore, or I don't have access to them, so I only have the JPEGs to work with. So there is a couple of issues that need to be fixed with this. The biggest one is, if I go back here, you see the first image and the second image. The white balance is different between these, so it's different in this one than the rest of the shots. Originally I probably had this set to daylight, and then I changed this to shade. So all the rest of the images are in this white balance, but the first one is wrong, so I need to fix that. So that's the first thing we need to do. And the second thing is, some of these have kind of had their contrast tweaked and others haven't. So when creating a sequence or a photo essay like this, what you need to do is make sure all the images are balanced so that they all look like they're part of the one sequence and not kind of shot differently or shot by different people, or just kind of to make them all consistent. So that's what I'm going to do in this process. So the easiest thing to do is to get all these images into Lightroom. And that's probably the quickest way to go about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all here in Mylio, and I'm going to go Photo, Edit with Lightroom. So what this should do is should send all these to Lightroom, which I already have open in the background. So they should be just already selected here somewhere. Yeah, so there they are. So they're part of a larger sequence, so I'm just going to hit import here. I want to add, and I don't want to do anything else to it. So import. So I'm going to go to my current import collection here, just so I can see them quickly coming in. Okay, so the images are all into Lightroom now, so I'm just going to quickly go through them and see what I need to do to these. So one of the things I've noticed too is it looks like I either didn't correct the vignette on some of them, or if I did, I added a vignette afterwards and kind of overcompensated a bit. So that's probably something I'm going to need to have a look at as well. So the first thing first is, let me just pop over into the develop module. To fix this, I need to change the white balance. So because this is a JPEG now, it's no longer a raw file, sometimes just changing the temperature doesn't work. So we'll see how we get on with this. But I think we'll get away with it in this instance. You have to be very careful, because too much and it's not going to work. So if I just switch between the two, that to me looks more or less accurate now. So there's before and there's after. So that's pretty much consistent with the rest of them now. So I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to do a few other little tweaks here. Maybe take the brightness up a little. And I want to try and see if I can fix the vignetting. I'd say the distortion was already corrected on that, so I don't want to go too far, but I need to fix it. So okay, so I'm just zooming in to check to make sure I'm not adding too much noise or anything to this. But that all looks okay to me. This was taken with a Canon 5D Mark II. And it was just as the sun was going down in the city of Oslo, down by the port. It's actually one of my favorite set of images. I know it probably doesn't look like much, but I really like this sequence of shots. Okay, so for the next slot, what I want to do is, again, I'm going to fix the vignetting on these and just kind of tweak the contrast and brightness a bit. So I'm just going to use the manual fix on this. Actually, I'm going to use the profile and the manual fix. Normally, I apply lens correction automatically, but I think the reason that it's not on these is I think I originally processed these using aperture and that doesn't have lens correction. So I think that's probably why the vignetting is still on these. And again, I'm not going to do too much to them because I want to kind of keep them looking the way they are, but at the same time, I do want to fix that vignetting because it's a bit distracting looking. Again, these were taken a good bit ago, so I'm not sure exactly what I did with them originally. But the aim of this is to just make them consistent. Like for example, I know I've already processed that extensively, so I don't need to do anything to that. But what I want to kind of do is make everything look reasonably like this. So again, this might just need a bit more contrast and a bit of clarity. But as I said, I don't want it to over process them. And I can probably darken down the sky a bit. So again, I can probably do something similar to this one as well. It's going to just take a little bit of tweaking and going back and forward between the shots. Again, just to make sure A, they're consistent, and B, I don't overdo it. Because one of the bad habits that I have when processing is kind of over processing. It's something I do quite easily, unintentionally as well. It's just kind of more, it's very easy to take something too far and then have to take it back. So I think that's probably close enough to that. I know there's more blacks in that other shot, so maybe I'll just take the blacks down a bit. And maybe take the shadows up. And again, for the first shot, that's actually not too bad. And that's, I might need to fix the sky in this as well. So I'll just bring the highlights down a bit and maybe up the contrast. Okay, and again, like I said, I'm trying to make sure I don't go too far with this. Okay, so I think that's okay. And then this is actually not too bad. Again, we just need to fix the lens correction. So again, I'm not going to correct the distortion because I think it's probably okay, but I am going to turn off the vignette correction. Again, I don't want to do too much, but I'm just trying to match it to this is kind of my master shot. Okay, and then this, we can just hit previous on this, and then we just need to bring up the exposure. So I'm just going to speed this up and go through this really quickly here so you're not sitting watching me edit for a while. So one more thing I might do to this is actually just kind of bring up the captain up here. So I'm just going to add a little, I'm just going to brush in over this and maybe just bring up the shadows on this slightly. I don't want to overdo it, but just kind of, you've got this kind of interesting composition going on here then if we can kind of draw attention to it. So again, there's before, there's after. Again, this is the last shot. I just need to bring up the exposure slightly on this. And I think this is actually slightly crooked. So I'm just going to straighten it a bit. The shadows on this, down the highlights, a little bit of the clarity. And again, I'm just going to paint in over this as well. Bring up the shadows. Again, not too much, just enough so that we're drawing attention to it. And if we look before and after, I think that works well. And I think that's the last shot. So if I just jump back now over to the grid module, and let me just zoom in so we can see all these. And I think we now have a consistent set of images. So I'm going to page through them quickly. So okay, so now that we have that done, the next important thing to do is if you're preparing these for use on the internet, so you want, in this case, I want to use them in a blog post, what we need to do is put some metadata on them so that, in particular in captions, when I upload these to Squarespace, it will use the caption information and it'll just help if you're to have your blog picked up by Google image search and so on. it's always useful to tag your images properly. So it's easier to do this in Lightroom rather than do it in Squarespace later. So what I'm going to do is I have a plugin in Lightroom that will let me quickly apply metadata. So I'm going to select them all. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some more keywords into it. So I have pics here, which I don't need, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to add this to ferry Norway. Oh, I have Norway already. Ferry dock fjord. The keywords don't actually matter because they're not going to be seen by Squarespace, but I like to just keep them in it anyway. Especially if I go to put them on something else. So if I use to say 500px or something, the keywords will be on it. Okay, so next what I want to do is I'm going to go to plugin extras, and we have this plugin here called search replace append and transfer. So if I open this, the target field I want is caption, so that's fine. So what I want to do is, actually I don't want to search and replace, I want to append caption, and we want to say in Oslo, Norway. Okay, so I'm going to apply it. Okay, so once that's done that, if I go down here, we can see it says it here in the caption. And what we want to do is I want to apply that to the title as well. So I'm just going to change this to title. I'm just going to call the title ferry docking in Oslo, and I'm going to hit append. Okay, so that's done that. So now for these three, I'm going to add a bit more metadata. So I'm going to use the same plugin extra again. And in this case, I want to change back to the caption. And we want to say the dock from Oud in the fjord. Okay, and we want a space at the start. So that will then add this to it so that it's just a bit more detailed on these images. Okay. Okay, and then I'll just manually do this one. I'm just going to say ferry passes another ferry. You could be way more creative with this and go through these much more detail and give them proper captions. I'm just doing this really quickly because it's primarily just for extra metadata for a blog post, just so that they can be found. So that's kind of the only reason I'm doing this. Again, you really should caption these better than I'm captioning them, and this is just kind of quickly going through this for the sake of this video. Okay, so that's pretty much that. So now that these are all ready, what I need to do is export them for use on the web page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all again, and I have a preset that I use for this, which will export them, add a little bit of sharpening, and then add my signature to it as well. So I'm just going to do that. And it is, I have a lot of export presets here, as you can see. So when I'm exporting these, I do them actually reasonably large, and the reason I do that is I like my images to be suitable for use on a retina display without being down-resed. So that's kind of the main reason. The resolution that I have them with on this, their images are 2400, so when they're on a retina display or a high DPI display, you can actually see them without any scaling, so they're nice and crisp and sharp. And that's kind of the idea behind it. I do have the compression turned down quite low though, so the files aren't huge, and it seems to work. People seem to like it, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so the next step now is, after we've done that, we can upload them to Squarespace. So I'm just going to quickly show you the process for this. I don't actually have the blog post written or anything, so I'm just going to load the images into it and add some kind of filler text for the minute. Let me quickly go to my web page that I'm going to put these on, which is my photo journal. So my photo journal is, I have two kind of main photo blogs. One is kind of kind of gear tutorials and all that kind of stuff. It's mostly kind of writing and technique and tutorials. And then the other one is just my photo journal, which is this one here. That is primarily, it's like a pure photography blog, so it's, I kind of mostly just put images onto this. So let me log into the Squarespace backend. So what I do in Squarespace is I'm going to add a new post and give it a title. We'll call this Fairy Docking in Norway. Okay, and so I'm just going to add a text thing. I'll delete the markdown and we'll just call this I'm just using filler text for the minute. I will replace this properly. So then what I'm going to do is add a gallery, and we want to upload our media, and we'll just find the shots we just saved. Okay, and the important thing is that they go up in sequence, so hopefully they will. One of the other things I could have done and probably should have done was rename the files. Again, that will just help with Google image search. It's one of those things that a lot of people just skip over, and I'm completely guilty of this myself. I skip over it all the time, but it's something that you really should do. But I can quickly rename them here in Squarespace as well. It's not a huge deal. So in Squarespace, if you use Squarespace, there's a couple of different methods of using a gallery. You could use a stacked gallery, which is the style that I want to end up with, but I find that doesn't let you use Lightbox, which I wanted to be able to do. So I always use a normal grid and then set it to 3x2 standard, and then set the image mount to 1, and then turn on Lightbox, and that way you can see them properly. So I'm going to hit apply here. So then we want to give it travel. And the last thing I need to do is I need to give it a thumbnail. So for the thumbnail, I'm going to use this one because that's my favorite shot. And then finally, I should give it. So I will actually add proper text later. So for the moment, I'm just going to hit save just so we can see this. Okay, I'm just going to hide the interface here. Again, so when I have proper text here, you can see that properly. And then here is the image sequence on the web page. And there you have it. So to finish this up, I will write a proper article to go with this, just kind of a description of what I was thinking at the time and kind of just general information, and add a few more bits and pieces, and then hit publish, and that'll be it. So there you go. That is the process of creating a photo blog essay, or a photo essay, or just a blog post with a sequence of images. It's one of the things that might seem fairly straightforward, but to do it kind of properly, or even semi-properly, you might not think this was done properly. It takes a little bit of kind of thinking, and the key thing here is to make sure that the images look part of a sequence. And if you look through them now, I think you can agree that they definitely look like part of a sequence, and not kind of different shots. So, yep, that's pretty much it. I hope you found this useful. It's kind of a little different than the kind of blog posts I normally do, so or vlog posts that I normally do. So I hope this has been useful to you, and we'll see you in the next video. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.